The ongoing fight for black voters is heating up with diametrically opposed approaches from the presidential campaigns. Kamala Harris appeared on Charlemagne the God's radio show.
I grew up in the black church. I will always work closely with the church because I understand who our church leaders are and who the congregation is. And then he's selling $60 Bibles or tennis shoes. Mm-hmm. And trying to play people as though that makes him more understanding of the black community. Come on.
And here's Donald Trump just a few hours after that in Atlanta.
I'll tell you what, any African American or Hispanic, and you know how well I'm doing there, that votes for Kamala, you got to have your head examined because they are really screwing you. They are really screwing you. Right.
Now, Harris is leading Trump by a big margin in registered black voters in the NBC News poll. But it's a smaller lead than Joe Biden won with in 2020 and much smaller than Obama's in 2008. NBC's Monica Elba is reporting from Yardley, Pennsylvania. I'm also joined by Michael Hardaway, former communications director for Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. Monica, what more do we know about Harris's outreach to black voters?
Well, this is really part of her opportunity economy pitch, which is something that she laid out first at the Democratic National Convention and then has been talking about who would stand to benefit the most from her plans if she's elected. And when it comes to black men specifically, we now know that there is an agenda that she's put forth that would include a lot of different things, including some forgivable loans, for instance, for black entrepreneurs. It would also protect some cryptocurrency investments. It also is laying out a position she's talked a little bit about but hasn't always gone into too much detail on, which is the idea of legalizing marijuana. So there are a lot of different components to a plan like this, and she spent time detailing that yesterday, as you mentioned, with radio host Charlemagne the God, and also at really answering questions when presented with things like, what would you do for this key constituency that, of course, she's doing better with than former candidate Joe Biden when he was at the top of the ticket. But when it comes to black men specifically, there has been some erosion, some slippage there compared to other numbers that the campaign is looking at and saying, how can we make a direct appeal? And that's also why you saw former President Obama as a really key messenger on that point, though he really had a pointed and sharp question that he posed to specifically black men about why they might be hesitant about electing the first black female president. And that's something that he's continued to expect to touch on. Chris.
Thank you so much for that, Monica. So, Michael, again, there is that slippage with black men we're seeing. And here's what some of them told Sky News in Detroit.
The Democratic Party has left black voters in the dust.
It's almost like they want to seduce us with Obama. Gas was cheaper. I know that my bills were cheaper. Life was better under President Trump.
Most black men in America are determining not do they want to vote for Kamala or Trump. It's do they want to vote for the vice president or stay home.
So what does Kamala Harris need to say to voters like that who aren't feeling the impact from Democrats in their communities?
You know, there are two very important things happening here at the same time. The first is many of those voters have a very good point. The Democratic Party has not done enough to engage with black men in a meaningful way. I think she has taken concrete steps this week to fix that, and particularly with the first initiative surrounding entrepreneurship and $20,000 loans. Entrepreneurship in the black community at every level, from barbers to tech entrepreneurs, is something that's incredibly important, and so that will be impactful. But also, we have to consider this, and black voters know this. Donald Trump is unfit to be president. He seems to be mentally unwell. At every level, he is not our candidate. And so what you're seeing is, among black voters, there may be some hesitancy, but it's not people who are supporting Donald Trump. It's people that are saying, I have an issue with the Democratic Party. I need those things to be fixed. We should also remember one thing. Our national debt is at $35 trillion right now. By the end of Trump's first term, that could be $50 trillion. That is incredibly problematic from an economic perspective. And so black voters understand that. I think black voters also understand the fact that these tariffs he wants to put in place will drive us into a recession. That's also critical. And so as we have this conversation, let's keep the perspective of black voters are smart voters. They understand what's at stake here, and overwhelmingly, they will continue to support this candidate in Kamala Harris because she's the better option for this country.
I'm curious about criminal justice because one of the criticisms we've heard of Kamala Harris, and sometimes without many specifics, is what she did when she was a prosecutor in California, right? And in a critical way. And then you have Donald Trump saying very recently he wants to return to proven crime-fighting methods, including stop and frisk. He talks about going after his political enemies. Does there need to be clear messaging about that? Do you think her record may actually be hurting her from the time she was a prosecutor with black male voters?
No, I think what she should do is move forward and focus specifically on how she will fix our broken criminal justice system. Whatever happened 15 to 20 years ago, I think for most black men is not at the top of their list in terms of how they're going to select a candidate. What she should do is focus on the fact that, there are many hundreds of thousands of people in jail right now for selling marijuana that is currently legal in many states. What she should do is focus on the fact that there are many people in the marijuana industry who are black who don't have access to banking because of the current system. She can fix those things. And again, look, Donald Trump is a criminal himself. He's been indicted multiple times. He's been impeached multiple times. So anything he has to say about the criminal justice system or anything around that has no relevance at all, and he knows that.